Good morning, Chair. How are you?
Oh, well, thanks. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are going to switch gears to our workforce, put our workforce hat on, and look at H34. Rick, if you'd be kind enough to join us and Kirby together, we're going to have Ledge Council just review where we are and look at the options we have with the recruitment aspect of our proposal that we're incorporating into our roles and responsibilities, which was a fairly narrow initial bill, which was H34. So we have another proposal for another piece to add to it. Yeah. So Kirby, if you'd be kind enough to join Rick, let's go through the bill at the moment, and then let's look at the options that we may be weighing. And then we're going to turn to Jessica Hartleben, who's our executive director of VEPSI, and Matt Kropp to at least discuss a possible addition to the bill. So we're going to first turn to our legislative counselors to look at the bill as it is and look at some of the options.
Oh, good morning, Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel.
Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel.
I'm going to share my screen, and you should have draft 2.1 of the amendment for H34. The only thing different from 1.1 is that I made this a strike all.
Right.
I thought it made it easier to read in the form of a strike all, so no actual change to language based on the last draft you read. Just to kind of bring you back up to speed, H34, as passed by the House, would make changes to the workforce leadership statute, 10 VSA 540. If you remember, we had SOCWED met over the summer to develop this language. So I worked along with the chair, Senator Clarkson, Representative Markov, and Kendall and Commissioner Harrington on language. And we came up with what you see as far as it passed the House.
Right, and just as a preamble, just to remind people, this was unfinished work from last year. We set up the office, we created the office, we financed the office, which actually required no new money. And this, what we worked on and ironed out during the course of the summer and fall, were the roles and responsibilities of both delivering programs and coordinating them. And those are the two separate things we accomplish in this, which is just identifying the roles and responsibilities of the new office and of the Commissioner of Labor. Correct. And so onto that, we're at the moment considering adding
an amendment to H34, which would be, some language came from S17, I believe, which was a bill introduced that would exempt military retirement.
And that begins on page
1. You have the intent language that's been added to the bill, which you have subsections A and B. Subsection A is kind of giving some background to the military retirement piece. Subsection B gives background to the workforce leadership piece. That was H34 is underlined in the bill. So you can read that language, but really, yes, section 2, which is 32 VSA 5811, is where the actual language is to amend statute involving military retirement. I'll defer to Kirby for language on that.
Great, and we have options on the language, so we can go through what we have at the moment, and then let's discuss the options that the House have basically presented to us.
Okay, sure. So again, Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel. What's in the bill here is pretty straightforward. I think I did walk through it once before for you. What you have is a full exclusion of all U.S. military retirement income and income received by beneficiaries for survivor benefits. So that's straightforward. It would be excluded from Vermont income and would not be taxed anyway. What the House did, I can share the screen and show you the language if you'd like. Yeah. Starting on page.
So we have in this draft that we have now full exemption for military retiree pension pay and survivor benefits.
That's correct.
And now what we are inserting what has been passed by the House right? Is that what you're proposing that we look at least? And Randy wants us to look and weigh the proposal that is coming to us to Senate Finance currently.
Yes. So S51 is the bill that passed the House. Are you sharing screen?
Yeah, you saw.
Yeah. And what the House did specifically was there was an unpaid caregiver tax credit, if you all recall, that passed the Senate in S51. And then when it landed in Ways and Means, they took that unpaid caregiver tax credit bill that came from the Senate. They removed that tax credit and included other tax credit and tax exclusion changes that the House preferred. And one of those things was affecting military retirement. And it's very similar to what you're considering here, except some changes, which I'll tell you about.
Right.
So it brings us to the part of statute that deals with retirement income and excluding retirement income. Under current law, there's a pretty limited partial exemption for military retirement income right now. It does not include survivor benefits. But under current law, up to 10,000 can be excluded if a person's under certain income limits. The House took that and expanded it quite a lot. They did include U.S. military survivor benefits, adding that to the current law, and put its own thresholds on page 8 of S51.
We have that as well right here.
So if the taxpayer has AGI of 125,000 or is less than or equal to the 125,000 of AGI, it would be fully excluded, just like what you're looking at in your bill right now. So treatment will be the same up to that amount of AGI. After that is where there's changes between S51 and what you're looking at. Between 125 and 175, that full exclusion starts to phase out. And by the time a taxpayer has 175,000 in AGI, the exclusion would not be available anymore. What the House did was they took the amount of money that's saved compared with the full exclusion and created a tax credit for veterans. And this is meant to be available for people who may not have military retirement because they didn't serve long enough, but they're still veterans. They still have a discharge record from the military. And if their AGI is up to 125,000, it would be a $250 credit.
So they create a fund to provide credit?
What did I say? I said 125. So up to 25,000 in AGI, there's a $250 refundable tax credit for veterans. What was the chair's question? Sorry.
I thought people at that scale of income didn't file.
There were questions about that
They
because sometimes they don't. I mean, some would, but there would be so for things like EITC and child tax credit, other refundable credits we have, it's the same issue where there's nonprofits out there and others who are in the Department of Taxes itself who are encouraging people to file.
So that
they may
can
not
get
legally
these
have to file, but they could have some refundable tax credits available. So there might have to be some outreach work with this credit from the administration to try to get people to take advantage of it.
A refundable tax credit up to what?
$250
A year?
Yes.
What I'll say, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes?
I really like that. What I understand about vets, veterans that are lower income that might not be filing and so on, this is a motivator to file, to go ahead and.
It is, it's an additional benefit they would get.
Refundable credit,
Right.
so I think this is good policy.
Yeah.
Now that is of what, 1.4 million in cost?
We have deferred a pat on that. That is my
Okay, we'll get
All right.
Pat up next.
Okay.
So the question I have is, that's exceedingly low income.
Mm-hmm.
I would charge anyone in this room to try and live on $25,000 a year. Very, almost impossible, in this state, anywhere.
We live on 14.
We are lucky enough at this table to not live on that. So, and I appreciate the effort and to Tom's point, if they did file, they would be eligible for many other benefits, some of which are, many of which, I mean, there are many other benefits they would,
Mhm.
but nonetheless, it's pretty low. Anyway, it's an interesting, thought,
Yeah.
because we know that's an incredibly vulnerable population for homelessness, for mental health issues, for numbers of other things, that veteran population.
Mhm.
So I appreciate the house's work on thinking about that.
So
Okay,
that credit phases out, at 30,000. So it starts to phase out at 25. One thing to note is the way it's currently drafted, you just need a discharge record. There's no requirement that it be an honorable discharge or anything other than dishonorable or bad conduct discharge. There's 5 basic types of military discharges. This would be available for veterans of any kind of discharge.
So bad conduct and dishonorable would get this benefit.
They
the way this
would.
reads.
They would, and both of those require, I did a little bit of military law, it's not my thing, I promise you, but did a little bit of background reading on it, and you need a court martial to have a dishonorable discharge or a bad discharge. So it's pretty serious stuff. The concern that was discussed in Ways and Means about not limiting it based on the type of discharge had to do with politically motivated discharges possible at the federal level.
of which we know there.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Those don't constitute bad conduct or dishonorable.
Yeah, they
They're
did.
typically general discharges.
There are other
Under
than
honorable
That is what I've read. That's what I've read. That
You
it was
don't
a
discharge a person.
other than honorable discharge. Not an honorable discharge, but it was called other than honorable.
Well,
But it
there are
wasn't-
such
it
things
wasn't
as general, which would fall into those categories, and there's no court martial or other punitive action associated with those kinds of discharges.
Right. So that's a policy choice that's in there that I wanted to flag for you. And I'm not sure that there's any other major policy choices.
And
built
did
in.
may I ask, did they identify, with the tax department, given that they're the committee that does this, did they identify what the average military retiree pay is in the state, and what did they base these incomes on? What was the data they used to base the incomes on? Or is that a question for Pat?
Pat's much better suited for that, yeah.
Great. So we have 2 proposals. Randy, I asked Randy, what he would prefer to have us include in the bill, and he wanted us to have the conversation about it.
Well, I think I want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I lean very strongly to our bill, because our bill is not simply a benefit to a group of people. It is also an economic development tool, so it fits into a larger agenda.
Right.
And at proper point, I'm happy to discuss that in more detail. But just to say in general, one of the purposes of our bill is obviously to give a benefit to people who've spent a career at a relatively low-wage job compared to the civilian world, providing something, but who come to us at an age, typically a middle age, late 30s, mid 40s, with skills that match skills that we need in our civilian workforce in many cases, particularly if it's combined with targeted recruitment, which we've also discussed. The purpose there is we have a tremendous deficit of people who have skills that we need. And it's those skills that many military retirees at that age have, and they don't need to go through CTE or other training programs in order to have those skills to be able to contribute to the workforce.
We don't need to spend money training them,
Correct.
unless there is some additional training they need, but mostly they come to us fully trained, which is what makes them so particularly attractive.
The second thing is that they often come as a pair. You have a substantial, and we've got some numbers that I can dig up somewhere, that shows the percentage of retirees who also have spouses. The spouses typically have careers as well, and a significant proportion of those are things such as teaching and medical.
Teaching.
Yeah, those 2 things we particularly need. We have to get people, though, in which we offer a benefit, such as a retirement benefit, that is comparable to what our other states should provide. And all
That's our
21
question for
states
Pat.
have that. And
Right.
Vermont is the one with the limitation proposed in the House bill that does not. The bill that we want, the bill that I suggest that we pass, is the bill that we have here as an amendment that does not impose any restriction and therefore matches what our surrounding states do.
And to that, I think Kirby and Rick, you have done, anything else to add? Okay, great. Then let's turn to Patrick because we need to appreciate what the surrounding states actually do. And if anybody else imposes a income restriction on this exclusion. Thank you, Kirby and Rick. Thank you both. Patrick, welcome back.
Thank you. So Patrick Titterton, Joint Fiscal Office. The answer to that question is relatively simple. So nationally, and then I'll come a little more locally. So first of all, on the federal level, none of this income is exempted. When you start looking at the states, so there's 9 states that.
So sorry, federally, none of this is exempted?
The feds tax all of this income.
Ah, interesting. I hadn't appreciated that.
So there's 9 states that don't have an income tax and therefore don't
Right,
tax
that's,
this
they don't
implicitly.
count in this discussion.
There are 29 states, including, well, so New Hampshire is in that group of 9, right?
And we have your memo on this?
Yep, I sent Heidi a couple of documents. I guess I'll just mention those first. So one is a memo from earlier in the session laying out sort of the proposal that you have included in your bill right now. The other one is the fiscal note for the version of S51 that is coming to, I believe it's actually on the notice calendar today in the Senate. So that'll be referred to Senate Finance. But going back to the states, so there's 29 states that do have an income tax but fully exempt all military retirement pay. And then there's 11 more, so there's 11 more that fully or partially exempt this income, but it's subject to income thresholds.
Right, which is what this is.
Which is what that is and is what technically Vermont has in statute now. And there's obviously a lot of restrictions on the ability to claim the existing structure.
Which is why we moved from red to yellow on Kendall's map.
Oh, I didn't see that map.
Oh, you missed it.
Oh,
We want to go to green, but
yeah. So I don't know if the determination would get you to green, but
I think it would still keep us in yellow.
but still
Anyway,
keep you in yellow.
so
Okay.
any other New England states that have an income
So
threshold?
none of the other New England states do this, but and I'll just say there's 2 entities that fully tax it also. It's California and Washington DC. So that's just the full spectrum of how this is sort of taxed nationally, but you're right. So New Hampshire doesn't have an income tax, so it doesn't really apply there. And then the other surrounding states, Massachusetts, New York, Maine, they
Exempt it fully.
They exempt it fully.
And what were you able to determine as you helped the House through this work? What were the incomes of military retirees that you identified?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's not exactly a simple answer. So there is no database out there that tracks what the household income, like all of their income types are for a military retiree household. You would think that the tax department might be able to tell you that.
Yes.
However, under the existing construct of the military retirement exemption you have on the books now, what they essentially have is a retirement income worksheet that a taxpayer will work through to determine which exemption is best for them to take on their tax
Right,
return.
whether it's Social Security or this.
That worksheet is not a form that is submitted. That worksheet is something that the taxpayer can use as a tool to then fill out the box on their tax return for which they are taking. But it is it doesn't necessarily ask you which one you're taking, it just asks for the number. So that's why when you hear a lot of the confusion of why can't the tax department just tell us this, it's because they can't. They don't have that information to be able to do that. But
It's not in W-2s.
no, it wouldn't
We
show up
would
there.
submit a W-2 from the government. We would submit a W-2 from any other job. Those documents together would indicate Who's in what bucket? Pretty straightforward.
I believe on the W-2 form, there is a bucket for retirement income, but it does, is that correct?
Yes, but I'm not gonna be able to.
Okay, I believe
I'm
there's
just saying.
a bucket for retirement income, but that would include any sort of, it could be a,
No, it's, the W-2 is from the US government for, military retirement. No,
I guess I just don't know if the tax
Okay,
department has
what would-
access to that. That might be a question for them.
So,
I have one of, so the question about what's the income, one proxy that I was able to look at, was we have this micro simulation model that we use for all kinds of like income, policy analysis. And so if I take the filers who receive pension income, and I only return the results for filers who have pension income, if I overlay that on top of the income thresholds that were in the House proposal for military retirement, there's about 17% of pension income receivers are accounting for 40% of pension income above 175,000. So that I think what that illustrates is that if you're just looking at the pensioners, that population, a lot of the income is still concentrated above that sort of upper threshold, meaning that they would be
so 40%.
higher income households.
So if you were gonna extrapolate from that, 40% earn more, 40% of military retirees in Vermont earn more than 170.
17% of pension, 17% of tax returns reporting pension income account for 40% of pension income.
But that is all pension income, it's not
Exactly,
military.
it's
As a result, you're not able to separate the two based on what you know right now.
it's just kind of a proxy maybe.
Yeah.
Right. But we're looking at a universe of 17% of the pensioners, of all pensioners.
Yeah, and
Not even military pensioners.
well, they would be included,
Okay,
but that's a bigger group of people.
got it. Okay, so,
There's some national numbers regarding military retirement income that is lower than that. I don't remember what the number is in terms of average income, but there is some data out there on a national basis. But again, it's not necessarily applicable because you don't know how many of these are military
Yeah.
in Vermont. There's
And-
no separation of the
And one thing included in the memo that I provided you is sort of the average pension benefits amounts. I think it's on page 2
of this one or this one?
of the memo, so the one in your
This one
right
right
hand,
here.
yep. And it just shows you so this is not accounting for total household income. It is accounting just for the pension benefits that the retirees in Vermont are receiving from the Department of Defense. So if you are looking at it,
So you have retirees, but you have retirees with, and what their annual pension is from, the military.
yes, but we don't know what other kind of income they might have.
Got it.
And where you're talking about families in terms of the income, the family income with spouses, they include all kinds of other income as
Correct.
well.
Yeah, I mean,
Correct, household
including
income may
earned
be
income.
substantially
they
more.
could have social security as well. They could be working. They could both be working.
They're young, I hope
They
they're
could
still
have,
working.
at that point, they could
Well,
have
you have
401k
all
or
categories
annuity.
in this number. It's not broken out.
So the key difference from a fiscal point of view strikes me as the difference between what these bills cost.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see, you can kind of get there, or get at the design of what the House did. They took a $3.9 million expenditure, and they basically overlaid that on top. So for income restrictions, it's the same thing as what's in statute for the child tax credit. Those income limits are the same. So they said, okay, let's look at that. It brings it down to 2.5 for the House proposal. And then the difference you can see is being made up with that $250 refundable credit. And actually, to your question before about whether they file or not, many of them are not going to be required to file.
Exactly.
But just because you're not required to file doesn't mean that there are benefits to filing.
This benefit might motivate them to file.
So you can get a number of those human service benefits without filing, I thought you said.
And for the For the benefits available to you through the tax code, you have to file. So
Right, like the
Herbie
earned
mentioned,
income.
exactly, earned income tax credit, child tax credit, this potential new, or even if you're working a job and maybe you got over withheld, you might still be entitled to have that withholding come back to you in the form of a refund.
So that's what takes the cost up to 13.5 million.
Well, just when talking about military stuff, the retirees and the veterans, that, if you think of that as its own like sort of siloed bucket, that's 3.9. So the 2.5 plus the 1.4 gets to the 3.9 again.
No, I appreciate that, but then the additional piece takes it to 13.5.
Exactly, yes.
A foregone revenue.
That's the child tax credit, the EITC, and then the bump out of the Social Security income.
Oh, so that's all, I'm sorry, so that's not comparing apples to apples. I was, sorry, so what is the actual foregone revenue to
of the House bill,
S51?
of the House bill in
Not
total,
in just the military piece.
not
which is
just
what
the
we're looking
military, is 13.5, and it includes 5 different changes to the tax code. What I think we're focusing on here today is the 2 having to do with veterans and military retirees.
And that is.
And that particular bucket is, as you said, the 3.9.
So we're keeping it at 3.9.
So in H34, with the full exemption, you would be hitting that 3.9.
Okay, so they're cost neutral, is what I'm hearing you say. They're cost similar. They have, it has an income lens through which it is filtered.
Yep.
And it provides a benefit for our lowest income veterans, our most vulnerable veterans.
And one thing you'll see in the fiscal note, I know I was just talking about the memo, but the fiscal note, all the way at the bottom, there's some information about, I believe the VA estimates that 15% of veterans are in households with an income of 25,000 or below.
50%.
15% of Vermont veterans.
Well, that's nationally, I think. Or no, that actually is Vermont specific. That
It
survey that
says
they did.
Vermont, and estimated of them, of the 34,000 veterans in Vermont, you say an estimated 15% of them have household income of 25,000 or below. That is a significant issue.
And that is, sorry for misspeaking, that is a Vermont specific survey that the VA did.
So what's discouraging about that, and is I think that's a future thing for us to be focused on, is how do we have so many trained veterans? Because everybody who's served in the military has a certain amount of training. How many trained veterans are coming back and have an income,
Well, the answer,
so below the poverty level?
the answer is simple. The answer is that the veteran who is at the age at which they can become a long-term worker in the workforce isn't here. They are going to the states where there's a tax exemption. And what we have are the retirees, particularly the National Guard retirees who are over 60.
So this may reflect, so what I think we need to look at here is the demographic then as well.
Kendall Smith from
Yes, Ken?
Department of Labor. We had in one of our slides yesterday a depiction of the average ages of veterans.
Yes, very.
And very much aligned to
Yes.
point Senator Brock with the rest of our demographics. It swings much older, especially outside of Chittenden County. So it could be that some are retired at some level and have, again,
Got
And we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, even of those retirees from the National Guard, is once they reach retirement age, the Vermont National Guard people are leaving.
I know, that's what we're trying to address. Dave?
That's what
I think that this number may reflect the fact that a host of Vermonters, and they're in a subset of those who are veterans, live on Social Security alone. And Social Security is roughly $25,000 or lower. So that demographic, that threshold doesn't surprise me at all.
Right. So anything else, Patrick, as we look at this,
Not unless you have other questions.
right?
Um,
Did they model this at higher incomes?
The House never looked at any incomes above.
They just
170.
parallel.
Yeah, they just.
They aligned it
It's
with
something else in
child.
statute,
Okay.
and actually as the
Well, that
bill
makes
came
sense.
to them, the unpaid caregiver piece that was removed by the House, that was also based on the child tax credit.
So they stripped the unpaid caregiver
They
also.
took that out
Okay.
altogether.
That'll be a challenge for your committee. So, committee, we are at a decision point on this, whether we include our original proposal, which fully exempts military retirees and survivors and survivor benefits, or whether we adopt S51's language. And I would just love to have your input, because this is not our discussion really from our committee. Our committee is the ones cheerleading on the bring more skilled workers here. We want military retirees here to work and live out their days, to make it sticky to be here.
Something that I would add, we had, if you remember some testimony, I think it was Megan Sullivan from the chamber brought in some documents, and one of the things that she brought in some documentation was a regional economic analysis produced by Clemson University for the state of South Carolina. And it's very, very much parallel to what we're seeing here in Vermont. And here they use the REMI model, which is the model that we use for things like the veggie program and so on, to look at the economic benefit in terms of an economic projection. The Clemson study did the same thing for military retirement income in South Carolina as to whether they should or should not exempt the retirement income. They modeled it and concluded that there would be a positive economic benefit in almost every case, and they did a variety of models that are reflected in this report.
Right.
We have copies of it, I think.
We do, and we all have that. Are we able still to do REMI modeling here? We do.
You would have to ask Tom Cadet to do
Yeah,
that. That's
I
not
spoke
something our
to-
office.
Okay, and that would cost us money, right?
Yeah, it would, well, it would, it would not. Jeff Carr, for example, who is the administration's economist, may be able to do it under
Right, but
that umbrella.
not in our time frame that we
Yeah,
have.
not in the time frame that we need, but it is possible, and I'm told also, at least what he told us is that JFO has some capability to use revenue modeling. I don't know.
Well, we have
Through
in the
Tom
past.
Cadet.
We've had in the past. So, I'd like us to think about this. This is one option. This is an option that we have. And I would, as we think about that, I would love to there has been another proposal that Wendy Harrison has brought to us that is workforce related, that is to expand a veggie benefit, a Vermont economic growth incentive benefit. It's a workforce training program. It's an economic development tool as well under BEPC. And we have a proposal to include that in this bill as a workforce development, economic development addition. I think we're pretty clear on the options, and I think Rick is gonna say what for our decisions. Is that okay?
That's great.
Great. Any other questions for Pat before he goes? No. Okay, great. Or Kirby. Thank you both. Great. So Jessica Hartleben, I would turn to you if you're still with us.
I am.
Great. Welcome. Thank you very much for making the effort. I know you're on a child tour of.
I'm back
You're back. Okay, great. Welcome.
for now.
You are familiar with S88. We've walked through it with Wendy, and this
Mhm.
proposes that we include employee-owned businesses as being able to take advantage of a veggie training program. Is that correct?
So for the record, I'm Jessica Hartleben. I'm the executive director of the Vermont Economic Progress Council. And my understanding of S88 as proposed by Senator Harrison is that this proposal would provide an enhancement to the current veggie incentive so that an employee-owned business would be eligible for an enhancement similar to a business that is under the green veggie enhancement or an LMA enhancement. And that in my read of the bill and in talking with Jeff Carr, just need to make clear that if a business qualifies for this enhancement by being an employee-owned business, that we would not exceed that 20% share that the state currently retains when providing an 80% incentive to the business. So in an LMA enhancement situation, if a business is applies for an initial veggie, they receive that initial veggie, they're entitled to that 80-20 split, provided that they meet their payroll requirements each year that's verified by tax. Under LMA, they're entitled to up to 100% of that maximum benefit.
And for our new members, can you just identify the acronyms you've just used?
Yeah, sure. So LMA is the labor market enhancement. So there's a definition within the Department of Labor that classifies businesses or areas within Vermont, which is the majority of the state right now, with the exclusion of Burlington, Franklin County, and I believe Grand Isle. There's like that little tri-area of the state that's not eligible for that enhancement. The rest of the state currently is. In terms of green veggie is an enhancement, again, to provide businesses up over the current 80% share of the incentive that is awarded. And that calculation is slightly different than the LMA. So in the green veggie model, the veggie incentive calculation uses a 90% incentive ratio instead of the normal 80%. Background growth is calculated at 20% of the normal background growth amounts. And the changes result in an enhanced incentive that averages 40% higher than the normal incentive amount. But those amounts all depend on the application data that is provided by the applicant based on new jobs that would be created and the increase in the payroll that would be generated. And that is all run through the REMI model, and Jeff Carr provides that data to us. And then they would also need to meet all of the other requirements to be eligible for the program. So just because you're an employee-owned business does not automatically mean that you will also be eligible for a veggie. You would have to qualify for all of the other requirements in the program.
So to help me understand this, currently an employee-owned company is eligible to get a veggie grant.
They would be eligible to get a veggie grant if they met all of the other requirements of the veggie program, yes.
Right, but not an enhanced. So what they're asking for in S88 is the enhanced benefit.
That additional 20%, they're asking for that additional 20% so that instead of in a regular veggie, typically the share is 80% to the business, their state retains 20% of that increased payroll that's generated. In S88, they're asking for the opportunity to go up to the.
Right, thank you. Thank you. I am not, Todd, I think let's pivot to you because you're an employee-owned, you represent an employee-owned company. I'd just love to hear why this would be so beneficial, because this is something we may probably want to take up at this time, just given we may want to do this in next year's economic development bill. Matt, sorry, what planet am I on? Sorry. Matt Kropp, would you like to come in and explain to us why you are seeking this and why this would be so helpful for you?
Well, so to clarify my kind of role and position, we
just introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Matt Kropp. I'm executive director of the Vermont Employee Ownership Center. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We haven't been sort of pursuing this bill, but I was invited to come in and talk about sort of the employee ownership and potential impact. So our organization's been around since 2001. We our mission is to promote and foster broad-based employee ownership in Vermont, and we focus on primarily the models that are outlined in this bill. So employee stock ownership plan companies, worker cooperatives, and other forms of employee ownership that are broad-based in terms of offering ownership to all of their employees through some structure, but don't fall into one of those two buckets, which are the types that are kind of recognized by a lot of federal work. So kind of from the perspective of economic development and public investment in the private sector, which Veggie is a clear example of. I think that there's a strong case to be made for why employee ownership and employee-owned companies are, an extra, a highly beneficial thing to prioritize in that. From a company performance perspective, there's been a lot of research. If you're interested in the research on this, there's an institute at Rutgers that's probably the best clearinghouse for a lot of the details.
We actually, in this committee, previous to this iteration of us, we've spent quite a bit of time on employee-owned businesses and really honor your work and honor the opportunity. So how would this benefit? Because our time sadly is limited, and I think our first decision is whether we want to include this in the bill or whether we want to wait and do this in next year's economic development bill. And I'm going to go back to Jessica with a question. But where are how would this enhance the opportunities now?
I mean, practically speaking, thinking about the companies that are in the state, I think there's the case, and you can look at sort of the impact of what is the sort of public benefit in Vermont to having extra resources support the expansion of employee-owned businesses, right? They tend to be stickier, not tend to leave their communities as much, et cetera. All of this stuff. And even when they are sold, I think the Vermont Information Processing example recently is a big one where the benefits are broadly based, go to people who primarily live here rather than a handful of owners who maybe are 51% residents of Florida for tax reasons, things like that. And so, with this sort of thing, right? Anything with kind of shifting the shifting numbers in these sorts of programs, right, is a question of pushing things to a certain extent on the margins, but this enhancement would be kind of an opportunity for some of these small to mid-sized businesses in Vermont to kind of be really thinking about expanding their operations in ways that exceed kind of the baseline, and with all the attendant benefits of employee ownership. And I know Chroma Technology, as an employee-owned company, and Veggie recipient somewhat recently, is a good example to look at in terms of what is possible.
Right. So thank you for that, Jessica. If you could weigh in. Is this something that Jessica, is this something the VEPSI board is supportive of? Where are you, or in your estimation, is this something I think we should look at next year and for our economic development bill? I don't think there's a rush for this, but I wanted to honor Wendy and have it at least discussed as something to add to H34.
Yeah, so Senator Harrison did present this concept to the council at one of our recent council meetings, and the council seemed genuinely supportive of the enhancement if it tips the scale for a business, an employee-owned business. But my understanding is that this employee-owned businesses, there are not a lot of employee-owned businesses in Vermont, and so if this would encourage employee-owned businesses to expand, and it's another tool in our economic development toolbox, that the council would be supportive of that.
Okay, thank you. Committee, Thomas.
I know Wendy Harrison serves on VSAC. Oh, sorry.
VEPSI.
So this language we reviewed earlier on, I'd be fine with adding it to the bill if you are, Madam Chair.
The cost, as I recall, and Rick, our counselor, is here, the cost is, this is not a cost to the state. I don't believe we don't need
it. No. It's foregone revenue. So it's presented in the tax expenditure budget each year.
And sadly, our JFO has left, but we could certainly ask. My guess is, given the number of employee-owned businesses, it would be modest, at least at the beginning. But
yeah, on average, I think that the total cost for Veggie in the foregone revenue range is around $2 to $3 million a year.
Yeah. Okay, committee,
And just for context, you know, the LMA enhancement does have $1 million cap. We haven't met that $1 million cap in at least 2 years.
right,
How much has it been averaging?
I think we're right now at about $200,000 to $300,000. We're halfway through the year.
still, just for the LMA, or for both, green veggie? And how's?
We haven't
green
had a
veg-
green veggie. We have not had one green veggie. We had a potential for a green veggie, and unfortunately, due to economic tariff reasons, that business withdrew their request for an application to be considered by the council. So I don't think that the green veggie has been ever utilized, but I'd have to go back and confirm that.
Thanks, so that's helpful. And Matt, is this something that we could look at in more depth next year? Do you feel, has your membership been pushing hard for this?
Yeah, so I you know, my sense of it is that, you know, a lot of folks are aware of it, but not, you know, it's not a kind of thing that has been, you know, top of the conversation. So, you know, certainly, like, if it would be helpful to have some company perspectives kind of on, you know, what this could look like, you know, I could talk to some people to provide that.
I just, at first blush, I think H34, I mean, it's, I think maybe this is something we want to continue to discuss next year in our economic development bill, if we want to hear that. I know Thomas is comfortable. Thomas has served on VEPSI. I would be comfortable doing this, just given how few companies have taken advantage both of the LMA and green veggie. If this is an opportunity for smaller businesses to take advantage of this as a workforce development, training, and employment and income increase opportunity and growth opportunity, that would be fine by me. But David and Randy, how do you feel?
I want to hear more.
Okay.
You know, the notion of adding a new program with foregone revenue in it in 15 minutes and without any testimony.
I just wanted to hear.
I'm not comfortable.
Great, you're with it. Okay.
I think it may be a great program to work on next year as part of our, and I'm happy to do that.
Great. I would propose then that we continue this conversation. Matt, if you'd over the summer line up some good people to make this argument, and Jessica, more to follow. And I think let's turn back to what the two pieces we have in H34 at the moment.
Great.
Thank you very much for your help. That was helpful. Thanks.
You're welcome. Take care. Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
So we have before us H34. We have two options now that we have to weigh in and land, and then I think we're ready to vote this bill out if you are all willing. Keisha, while you were gone, we heard about the House proposal, H51, which sets the income threshold. This to me is a finance discussion, and so I think what I hear from Randy, you're the main mover and shaker on this piece of the bill. What is your recommendation that we do?
My recommendation is that we do the full exemption as originally contemplated in the amendment. And the reason for that is because that is an economic development bill. The other is not an economic development bill. We passed it.
Okay, David?
So I agree with Senator Brock, but I do have to caveat everything about this discussion that because I materially gain from this bill, I'm not going to vote. I'm good, right up front. I passed this through the ethics committee and I get it, but because I materially gain from the vote, I don't feel comfortable.
Right.
But I'll certainly give you my opinion.
Can I just say a technical piece about this? So I would say for the purpose of the committee, it's a pretty informal position to take. We might want to, I don't know if we're taking a formal vote.
Yes, we're going to vote.
Okay, so then we want to list that as an abstention.
Oh, you mean on the initial piece, I want to choose first in a straw poll whether we include the S51 or whether we, the original piece that's in our bill at the moment has the original bill. Thomas,
I'm
we're,
gonna take his vote and vote in support, so I'll vote twice. No, I will say this to Senator Brock, I want this map to go green, and I agree that I'm supportive of putting the full exemption onto this bill, but I'm also at my core a realist, and I feel like what the House did is something that it has merit, and I definitely support, and I see can get over the finish line.
Yeah, I would agree with that it helps us along, but it doesn't help us with our economic development,
Sure.
which is what we're really focused on. That's what this committee does.
right, this is a workforce.
You know, and our
Recruitment piece.
purpose is, how do we get the workforce here? And this makes us equally as uncompetitive as we are right now. The House's position.
Here, it's right here.
So I agree, I don't expect this to actually survive finance because of.
Depends how.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the full exemption. This I'm more optimistic on. And the other thing I'll say, this is great. I like what the House did. And then if anything, that makes further, if this gets across the finish line, that's only 1.2 million to fully exempt. And that'll be a different conversation next year and the year after and so on. Does that make sense?
Well, it may be and it may not be. It depends on the composition of the bodies at this time, but I think we're close enough. And our need for these positions to begin recruiting just as actively as we're recruiting for housing is so essential that it's an emergency, and waiting is not good for Vermont.
So,
I go either way.
okay, and you know what? You're about to have this conversation in finance.
Yeah,
So
would you?
we're,
And I'll vote.
we're setting this bill for you to.
I think you, Tom,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say, I think you should vote right now as a member of economic development about what you'd like to see in finance, and then you can.
Full exemption, and I'm voting twice for it.
Okay, right. And I think you could participate in the straw poll.
I would like to say though, that I think it was S51, which has the alternative approach, that to characterize any service as qualifying as a veteran service does a great disservice to those who
Stuck it out.
Stuck it out. But so my objection there is those that exited military service with a bad conduct discharge. That is a huge red flag. That is absolutely like non-starter.
That's
for me.
included.
That's in there?
I've been on many court martials and I know the difference.
Yeah.
Is Bill Canfield a veteran?
Yeah.
Bill, I don't know.
He is a veteran.
Okay.
He is, I believe he's a veteran, but
Navy
not a
veteran.
military retiree.
So
So,
Okay.
Keisha, where are you weighing on the full exemption or the House version?
Well, I'm going back to like other concerns about the bill. If, we have a lot of veterans in the Senate, and if,
There's two.
This is military
Two
retiree.
retirement.
two with retirement, okay. No, I just mean, who's looking at the other policy pieces?
This-
Is our decision just about the amount? Because that's,
So that,
No,
it's,
No,
finance is the amount.
we're talking a full
Mhm.
exemption. This is a recruitment tool to bring people to Vermont.
okay. No,
And the Senate Finance will make the decision because they're gonna get
Yes.
HS
okay.
51.
But we're economic development. So what I'm hearing, because I haven't had a chance to absorb anything past the amount, the partial exemption and so the full exemption.
Yeah, Kirby and Patrick presented.
Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't here, but are we taking a straw poll on the other pieces of that section besides the amount? You said you're.
We didn't,
partial
those
or
were the
full.
key differences. Those were the key
Which
differences.
led to the amounts, which leads to two different summary amounts.
Am I making any sense?
Yes, right now I think we're debating on the full exemption.
Oh, okay.
Or what the House did in
So
S51.
we're,
And then we're gonna talk about who was exempted.
Only if you go with the House.
Yeah, so if we go with the full exemption, I
If
think.
we go with the full
Oh,
exemption, we
great,
don't-
okay,
and we're gonna send it to finance to have a further conversation.
okay, but then we erase all their other language that had caveats about.
We're not including their language at all at the moment.
So we're not touching that bill. That's S51. We don't have
Okay.
possession
So
of it. We're-
that's
Okay.
finance, that's fine.
Okay,
But it'll get to finance it.
So-
Somehow it will be combined because
Okay.
they're two different bills
Right.
on the same.
okay, well,
side.
then
I'm
I'll say
talking to Pro Tem about that.
two things. It sounds like maybe our military retirees are going to participate in the discussion, but not maybe take a vote, but I would encourage finance to hear from our veterans and our military retirees
Mhm.
about the other policy language as
They will,
well.
because it's coming to them anyway.
Good.
independently.
But I would support the full exemption.
Okay,
I have a grandfather who was a Navy veteran, World War II, Purple Heart. life is expensive when you're older. It's more expensive than $170,000 a year.
I don't disagree. So I think the committee, I think what we would like to do, Rick, is I think we have H34 as drafted includes that original proposal. And so I would, at this point, given we're about to go on the floor, I would welcome a proposal for us to pass out H34 favorably.
What's
I
H?
will so move.
This is the workforce bill with other things we've already considered.
But does it
Draft
now
two-
have,
Right,
Yes,
Draft
full
2.1.
exemption.
this has the full exemption?
this has the full exemption.
Sorry, I'm
So, no, that's okay. This is, we're trying to catch you
Trying to,
up
like,
as quickly as we can.
cheat on the test over here.
Am I voting?
Is it a vote or a straw poll?
No, we did the straw poll, and the straw poll was to include the full exemption.
Great.
So I would entertain a motion to pass H34 out favorably with the full exemption
Should I
and
be
with the
absent?
roles and
Should I just be-
responsibilities.
No, you can sit.
Yeah, and the question is, I'm
Yeah,
not
you
sure
can
that
say.
have you talked to Bloomer? I don't know.
I
that you
have,
can
and I don't agree.
abstain.
I have,
So
but
you
I've
just
talked to
don't
the
agree
ethics
with
committee,
Yeah,
I've talked to Bloomer, but I
Yeah.
materially gain, and it goes against
Well,
mine.
I
it's
you
if
can
you
still
own
be
a
the
farm and you vote on a farm bill.
Right.
Issue.
So
Farmers vote on farm bills
This
all the
is
time.
a little different.
Here's-
This is a direct.
this is where
This is
I'll
not
just
indirect.
finish my homily because it is important for everyone. A committee vote on an issue like this is pretty much up to the chair if she'll allow a member to abstain, invoking the same rule that will come up on the floor about whether or not you materially
Yeah,
gain.
floor rules are different from committee.
When you go to the floor, you do have to ask the permission of the full Senate to be exempt from the vote.
It's fine.
And
That's your
this,
intent.
and you've probably heard from
Fine.
Bloomer that that has come up before, and senators have to take very seriously that we all are impacted by legislation we pass. The question is just if it's only relevant to us alone and not other military retirees, other teacher retirees, et cetera.
But I get it. I've done similar.
So I would encourage you to vote with us in committee as a committee member, as a recruitment tool, and not because you will, in finance, the actual benefit will be discussed.
So you could choose to ask the Senate to invoke that rule, or you could choose to be absent from the vote.
Ken,
I don't know if this is appropriate, I'm so sorry to chime in from the side, Ms. Kimball Smith, but would it be better to divide the question? So if there was a desire to vote on the first pieces of the bill around the Department of Labor versus the office, that's not a conflict, and then,
yes, you could do that on the floor.
okay, but not in the committee vote.
I wouldn't worry about it. I think in the committee vote, we're voting on this as a recruitment tool and that the actual benefit to David, to any military retiree will be considered in finance. So,
Ready?
yeah.
Vote. Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes, yes.
Senator Ron Hinson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks,
You
I've
could
got
vote
to
in
be,
committee on the retirement piece. Okay,
just rubs me the wrong way. So
okay.
I'm going to just be absent.
This would be an abstain.
Okay?
Sorry to be
Senator
such a
Clarkson.
Poindexter
Yes.
about that.
Thank you. And I'll be the lead reporter on it, but Randy is going to report his section. Thank you. Thank
You
you,
are the lead
Department of Labor.
reporter.
Thank you, Sabina. Great. Randy and I will do it together, but
Next week, we're doing pot.
yeah, so we are, and we're going to try and land, the things that we have left outstanding that we really need to land are the flood piece, and I think, thank you for your help on that. I mean, it's interesting.
I decided Tom is my anger translator, but first he needs to understand why I'm angry.
So were you there? Well, you shouldn't be angry. I think that we're all on the same, we're trying to get to the same spot. But were you there for Jill's skit last night? The anger translator? Oh my God,
No,
it's-
I mean,
it's-
Mira, we had to go.
Okay.